1. One day while I was at work, a customer told me I was worth less than her because I work at Dollar Tree. She obviously hadn't heard we raised our prices, and I told her not to get mad at my cashier for being autistic. I was in the back, and I heard a woman yelling, "Where's the manager?" So I walked up and said, "Hi, my name is Alex. I'm the manager. What's going on?" She said he hit the belt in frustration. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Sometimes the belt gets stuck, and we have to tap it to get it to move." And she responded that she didn't like his attitude. I asked what she meant. She just kept yelling. She said she didn't like his attitude. I guess she really didn't like it. Then the lady behind her complained that he swung the broom she bought near her. Okay, there's something I can work with, I guess. I said, "Hey man, I know you wouldn't do it on purpose, so try to be a little more aware when you're handing someone a broom, so you don't accidentally come close to hitting them. I mean, we don't want to sweep the floor with the customers." Woman 1 then stormed off. Then she came back in while I was giving my store manager the rundown of what happened. She said she didn't like my attitude and how I handled it. I said fine, and I introduced my store manager. "So what do you want me to do? Tell him to speak differently?"
"They wouldn't listen when I complain, but the white lady behind me talks and they listen."
"Whoa, this isn't a race thing. I addressed the problem you brought up, and the lady behind you brought up a different problem. You don't get to talk down to us like we're worth less than you because we work here."
"You are worth less than me."
I lost patience at that point, and I said, and I know I probably shouldn't have, but if you've ever worked in retail, you'll understand. "Get the fuck out of the store or I'll call the cops and you can be escorted out." Then the lady storms off. A little later, the phone rings. "Thanks for calling Dollar Tree. This is Alex."
I thought I was calling corporate. But you know what?
So I cut her off and said, "I'm not listening to another word you say." And then I hung up, knowing there was no point in getting into another argument because, quite frankly, you can't fix stupid. 2. This story is potentially one of the scariest encounters I had as a child. It happened 7 or 8 years ago, and was, again, very scary at the time, so please bear with me on the details. I was somewhere between 11 and 12, and had still had a few more years before I would reach the legal working age in my country of residence, Canada. I was at IKEA with my dad, shopping for a new bed after my sister, she's 2 years older than me, had decided she wanted her very own room, and the 2 twin beds my dad had nailed on top of each other, and called a bunk bed, were no longer necessary. I was dutifully fooling around in the store, aka the world's greatest place, in case you never went to IKEA as a kid, while I waited for my dad to go find something incredibly boring he just remembered he needed to get for his office, like a bookshelf or taxes, when a strange woman interrupted me.
"Excuse me," she said, sounding like she actually didn't care at all whether she was excused. "Do you know where the rugs are?"
"Oh, no, I'm sorry," I said, because I was a child who could barely remember the last time I had been to IKEA, and certainly had not been paying attention to where the rugs were back then. "Maybe you can ask someone else."
"No," she insisted. "You work here, so you have to know where everything is. That's your job."
She was very much in my space at this point, pointing and yelling, and I was torn between being very, very afraid of her and very, very confused. I was fairly sure that it was obvious I wasn't an adult, because I was 11 and hadn't yet gone through puberty. I have never been particularly tall, maybe on the shorter side of average at best, and while I've always been a bit chubbier than my peers, I hardly thought that made me look like anything approaching an employed adult. Foolishly, I thought that if I could just correct her, she would leave me alone. "But I don't work here," I told her, trying very hard not to cry.
"Yes, you do," she said. "I saw you."
To this day, I can only assume that something about my playing made her think that I was working. It's the only thing I can think of. I was playing around with a printer or something that I think might have actually been for employees, but still. I wasn't even wearing a blue shirt. "There's no excuse," she told me. All the while I had been thinking that I had a very good one indeed. "You have to know where everything is, so just tell me where they are." I was out of options. Thankfully, or so I thought, I remembered that IKEA has a linear layout. I looked it up, and apparently there are shortcuts, but all I knew as a kid that I go in one way and out the other, and I would get to see everything on the way. Since there were only 2 doors in the room and I hadn't seen any rugs on my journey there, I pointed to the one that I was pretty sure I hadn't come in. I've never been great with directions. Maybe they're over that way. At the very least, she would go off looking, and I wouldn't have to deal with her anymore. Or so I thought. No! To my dismay, she was still there, and still very, very angry. I was just down there and I didn't see them. So they aren't there. Tell me where they are. I couldn't even suggest she go in the other direction because she then started swearing at me in a combination of French and English, and I couldn't get a word in edgewise. I think she called me incompetent or something, and even though I wasn't the best student in my French classes, I did recognize some words that I knew I should be very, very offended by. Mostly I was just scared of her. It was the first time I had ever had any kind of experience like this, and I had no idea what to say to get her to leave me alone. The store was pretty empty, and I didn't know exactly where my dad went. I couldn't even see any real employees who would be able to help me. And any other customers in the room just didn't seem to notice. Her yelling wasn't like loud, it was just scary because of her tone and her refusal to leave me alone. And if they did, they didn't care. Thankfully, my dad came back just a couple of moments later. I wish I could write up a transcript of his heroic rescue, but I actually hardly remember it at all. They argued for a bit. My dad shouted something about her leaving me alone and me being a child, and eventually she left in a giant huff without so much as an apology. I didn't care. I was just glad she was gone, and there is no way any half-hearted apology about how she thought I was an employee, which would have made it perfectly fine for her to treat me the way she did, would have meant anything. We didn't split up again for the rest of the shopping trip. 3. I work at an auto parts store, and a customer had one of my other co-workers order 2 struts for his truck. They had to be special ordered and would take a week to arrive. Our store policy is to charge up front for these parts because they have freight charges, but my co-worker had forgotten to, or for some other reason had not done so. Here comes my first 2 interactions with this customer. The struts come in, and I call his phone to let him know that the struts have arrived, and to come pay for and pick them up whenever is most convenient. He comes in later in the day, and when billing him out for the struts, he makes a big fuss about the warranty on them. There was a mix-up between him and my co-worker that had ordered them, I guess, and he told them that they were a limited lifetime warranty. I told him the proper information, that these struts, KYB brand struts, had this warranty through the manufacturer only, and not us. He complained that if his struts were to break, that he would be stranded waiting for new struts in this scenario, which I commented that even if we had the warranty through our company, we'd still have to wait to order them again, running into the same issue. After accepting my answer, he had me print KYB's warranty policy, which I did, and then I billed him for what I thought were 2 struts. I have anxiety, and among this warranty talk we had been incredibly busy, and I was beginning to get stressed. Under this stress, I failed to notice that I only ended up billing the customer for one of the struts by accident, missing an extra $180 in the process. My coworker mentioned this after the customer left, so I quickly made a phone call to him saying I only accidentally billed him for 1 strut and not 2, and that he needed to return to pay for the other. The call went to voicemail, unfortunately, so I had to let my boss know about the mix-up, and that I'd try my best to keep contacting him until I could at least get an answer. Over my next few work shifts, I call and run into the same issue, just voicemail. Of course, I did not call on holidays, it having been Christmas Eve and Christmas recently. After my last call a day ago, I began to give up hope that he'd even answer, let alone come in, and that I thought the store would be out the money on the other strut. Then, like a late Christmas miracle, the man had come in during my shift today, once I finished with the customer I was helping. He came up to me, and then said the most confusing and frankly insulting thing I've ever heard, completely polar opposite to what I was expecting. In summary, the man first said that he thought I was slandering him on the phone for not paying for the other strut. Being a professional, I had not accused the man of stealing in any of my voicemails I had left, but he believed that I had done so, and that he needed to speak to my store manager. This store manager was not on the clock at the moment, and I was the highest position employee available at the time. The man then said to not interrupt him and let him finish, saying that he believed the price difference was a veteran's discount. He did not tell me he was a veteran, nor did he have any attire leading me to believe he was one, and that he did not think anything was odd with the price being half what was expected. He also went on to say that he was going to pay our regional manager, and not us, even though that is not at all possible and not how our company works. If he wanted to make up the difference, I said, he'd have to pay for them then and there. He then flashed me his wallet, saying he had over $1,000 in cash in his wallet, so he had the means to pay for the strut, but that he was going to refuse to do so, and arrange a meeting with our regional manager to pay for it instead. Additional note, my store manager has no idea who this man is and is unaware of any contact he has had with our regional manager, leading me to believe that he was being a male Karen, and not him being close to the regional manager in any way. The man then said that he no longer wanted to receive any voicemails and that he'd hang on to the ones he had to show my regional manager, once again not worried at all, because nothing I said in any of the calls was accusative in any way. The man then left and I immediately called my store manager. He, as expected, was extremely confused by this situation, because he had never encountered it before, but that it would be right to press charges against the man after this visit, assuming he'll never get in contact with our regional manager. Before the man had come in, my manager explained. He said that it was the store's fault for failing to bill him for the other strut, making it not illegal to never come back. But now that the man had come in, lectured me, and flaunted his wallet of cash but refused to pay, it was now on him for failing to pay for the strut, and he was now committing a crime for failing to do so. I had never run into this before, and I'm just wondering if there was anything I should have done better to try remedying the situation. Personally, I don't think I could have done anything to satisfy the man, and I think he may just be a little bit crazy, to be honest. But I'm obviously biased for myself. What do you guys think of this? 4. I work at Goodwill, and we lock up the fitting rooms an hour before closing. This is plastered across the front of every single fitting room door. It's announced in the hour, half hour, 15 minutes, etc. leading up to the fitting room's closing. I was locking them up and taking out the absolutely nightmarish mountains of clothes inside. New manager hadn't assigned anyone to lock up the fitting rooms, so by the time I realized nobody had done it, it was already 15 minutes past when they were supposed to be locked. I had filled a shopping cart piling high with the clothes from inside, and all of the put-back racks were overflowing. I was frantically hanging up the clothes from the cart when a woman came up to me. I recognized her from when I was on the register earlier. She had come in the door and immediately asked me if we had a specific item. "Ma'am, this is a thrift store. I don't know." I told her they'd be in the craft aisle if we did, and she had me limp, bad hips, bad knees, bad body, across the entire damn store to take her to the craft aisle. And now she said, "I know you guys close the fitting rooms, but could you let my daughter in for just a few minutes?" I told her, "No, sorry, I can't." She pushed it. "Okay, but she just has a few things." "Sorry, we can't unlock them." "Even for just a few minutes?" "No, they're closed for the night. They've been closed for like half an hour. Sorry." She skulked off, and we had to make a special get-the-hell-out announcement for her. The sole customer left in the store at closing time. Look, I know she wasn't trying to be difficult. I know she was probably pissed that her kid couldn't try on just the pair of jeans or whatever. And I get that there's nothing inherently shitty about either of the things she did. And I was just in a bad mood, but I didn't like her. And she came up to an injured teen scrambling with probably 4 shopping carts worth of reshelves, half an hour to close, and asked to be the exception to a rule she knew about. And she was just like the third person to try to be the exception. I don't have patience for fitting room bullshit. I don't have patience for customers who clearly show in their attitude and tone that they have no respect for me. I don't have patience for the exception, and as someone who's pretty scared of confrontation, I'm proud of myself for sticking to store policy and not making an extra 10 minutes of work for myself. 5. I used to work in a liquor store that had a small selection of videos and magazines for an adult audience. Just FYI, here in California, a lot of businesses call themselves liquor stores and are really more like convenience stores with a large selection of adult beverages. Anyhow, one of my regular customers would only buy adult media items and would always want a receipt, which was just fine with me. Even though most of my customers did not care about getting a receipt, this customer always felt compelled to give me a reason why he needed the receipt. I never asked any of my customers why they were asking for one because their reasoning never mattered to me, as getting a receipt for a purchase is something customers are just entitled to for any and all reasons. I always suspected that the customer I am referring to here was never or rarely being truthful as to this need to get a receipt because he always rather nervously gave me a different reason. Just to provide examples, more than once he claimed he was buying the adult materials for somebody else. However, my favorite excuse was that he was doing research for an article he had in the works and wanted to be able to claim the materials as a business expense tax deduction. Eventually, I got a bit tired of being lied to, but I was not comfortable saying, "Dude, it's a bit daft of you to lie to me about something like this." Instead, I chose to say, "Sir, I really do not think it's any of my business why a customer is asking for a receipt." I also had another customer who frequently bought adult mags and videos, and apropos of nothing would claim to be buying a gag gift for a buddy's bachelor party, which I really did not give two shits to know. Eventually I rolled my eyes and sarcastically said, "Wow, you sure do get invited to lots of bachelor parties." I got called the B word for that one. I also had a customer return 4 or 5 adult videos in a short period of time, claiming they were defective. And he was the only person who ever came to me trying to return wonky videos. I came to believe he was not being truthful, so I eventually said, "I'll do the return this time, but I am really not supposed to take returns, and I'm not sure I think you're being honest with me. So any further video returns you'll need to speak to the manager or the owner." Guess what? That guy never came back to me with defective videos. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Adventures in Fast Food and Retail, episode 194. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Please hit the like button before you go. If you want early access to the videos, then subscribe to my Patreon, linked in the description. Also linked there is the Hellfreezer Teespring merchandise store, where you can get yourself some hoodies, mugs, and what have you. I'm not sure how much the what have you is, I'll have to check. If you especially enjoyed the video, then why not leave a tip? I mean, there's many reasons not to, but if you want to, hit the little heart with a $sign in the middle and select the tip of your choice. You don't have to do this, but thank you if you do. Alright. Okay, we do have other business today. There's new business now in the videos. Okay, so let me know if you think I should do this at the start of the video or after the video. I'm open to feedback, but I'm resistant to change because I am old and grumpy. But I'm open to feedback, and we'll see what we can do. But so right now we're going to have the question of the day, then we'll have the question, and then we'll have the answer of the day. That's what it is. Question, answer. I guess that makes sense. Okay, so here's today's question of the day. And today's question is, if you're buying a box of donut holes, shouldn't the box just be empty? No, right, seriously. I'm just amusing myself. I think I've gone a bit silly. What is something in form of entertainment you'll always give a new version of it a chance, even if you think it's gotten a bit crap? For me, that is, well, there's 2 things I can mention, Star Trek and Doctor Who. I've generally enjoyed something about all Star Trek shows and all Doctor Who shows, with the exception of Prodigy, which I've not really watched, so I can't judge that fairly. But even although I think they've had weaker moments than others, I will always give a new iteration of each of those a chance to entertain me because I have so many happy memories of the franchises in general. That's my answer, so why don't you let me know what yours are in a comment below. And speaking of comments, here's today's answer of the day. And today's answer comes from Angharad Mac, and this is in relation to the getting mistaken for an employee question. I was mistaken once in a Spirit Halloween store around 3 or 4 years ago. I had dressed pretty goth, probably had on my Alice Cooper Theatre of Blood concert tee, definitely jeans, a plaid shirt as a jacket, hikers, and a pair of wired earbuds, with one out for awareness mode. I came around a corner and a mom with a preteen girl asked me where she could find something, or to show her something. My neurodivergent ass just stared a couple of seconds, processing, and then she goes, "Do you work here?" "You don't, do you?" I'm like, "Sorry, no." "I thought your earbud..." Then we both just awkwardly wandered off. Alrighty, that's us for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.